Today's episode of the macabre chef of the night. In a small town in the countryside, there was a restaurant famous for its delicious food. It was a traditional place, with recipes passed down from generation to generation. The restaurant, called In the Shadow of the Moon, was run by a solitary chef, a man of few words, known only as Mr. Antoine. No one knew much about him, except that he only accepted to work at night, and the restaurant only opened after 10 p.m. Every night, people who entered the restaurant left fascinated by the taste of the dishes, but something always seemed strange. Customers noticed that the lights in the main room were always very low, and the discreet staff never spoke more than necessary. When asked about the menu, they answered that the specialties were always surprises prepared by the chef, and they assured that everything was fresh and made with the best ingredients. One night, Clara, a young journalist in search of an intriguing story, decided to investigate. There was something dark about the place that piqued her curiosity. Local legend said that no one had ever seen the chef outside the kitchen, and that although he was well known, no one knew where he lived or what he did during the day. Some believed that he never left the restaurant. Determined to find out the truth, Clara reserved a table for dinner and brought a discreet camera with her. When she arrived, she was greeted by one of the waiters with the same apathetic expression as always. The room was almost empty, except for two couples who were eating in silence. The atmosphere was cold, and the air seemed to carry a sense of oppression, as if something was always lurking. She watched carefully as the dishes were served. The aroma was irresistible, but Clara decided that she would not touch the food until she had investigated the kitchen. Halfway through dinner, using the excuse of going to the bathroom, she got up and crept through the hallways to the door that led to the kitchen. As she approached, she heard muffled murmurs and the constant sound of knives being sharpened. Her hands sweated as she slowly opened the door. The kitchen was a large, white-tiled room, spotlessly clean, but what caught her attention was a large marble table in the center where pieces of meat that looked like no ordinary animal were laid out. As she watched, a figure stepped out of the darkness. Mr. Antoine was a tall, thin man wearing a blood-stained apron. His eyes were fixed on the cut he was making in a piece of meat that looked strangely human. Clara stood transfixed, watching as he handled the meat with frightening precision, cutting pieces that, when she realized, could not belong to any animal. She almost screamed, but covered her mouth, trying to keep quiet. Suddenly he stopped what he was doing. Without turning around, he said hoarsely, "What are you hiding to see?" Clara took a step back, but tripped over a pan on the floor, making a loud clatter. The chef turned slowly, his cold eyes meeting hers. With a smirk, he stepped forward. "You look hungry, miss. Why don't you join us?" Before Clara could react, two waiters appeared behind her, their faces impassive, as if controlled by some unknown force. They grabbed her by the arms and dragged her back into the dining room. In that instant, Clara understood what was happening here. The restaurant didn't just serve exotic food. It offered something much more macabre, human flesh. Customers who ventured too far, who questioned things they shouldn't, became part of the next main course. The last thing Clara saw before she lost consciousness was Mr. Antoine's smile as he raised his sharp knife. "I think you'll like tonight's dessert." Days later, the town was still talking about Clara's disappearance. The restaurant continued to operate, and new customers continued to arrive, attracted by the fame of her unique dishes. Few remembered her, and no one dared to question what really went on in the shadows of that kitchen. If you've reached the end of this story, you need to subscribe to this channel and leave your like. Watch out for the boss.